Hey guys, it is Tim with Tabletop Terrors, and today I'm going to tuck in this. I always forget to do this. Today I'm going to be doing some live session prep. Now, I'm hiding this video until after the session runs, so it should be released relatively soon after the session. I'm going to give you this disclaimer right up front. I might not get through this whole thing. I have a limited amount of time. My daughter's taking a nap, but I want to go over with you a method that I've been kind of tinkering with and something that's kind of coming together in my mind. I'm calling it the bucket method or the 3-bucket method. So yeah, I'm going to do a lot of screen sharing and just spitballing and brainstorming. But I'm prepping for session 3 of the Dragon Grin campaign. That's our campaign world that we publish books for through Absolute Tabletop. James and I here at Tabletop Terrors. And so that's what I'm going to do. And so I'm going to screen share now. Obviously, there's no chat, so there won't be any questions. And none of you smart people to help me out when I get stuck. So let's go ahead and screen share here. And let's do, actually here. So what I'm going to do is screen share my Google Docs. All right, this is Google Drive, okay? Drive.google.com. If you don't know what this is, it's essentially an online hard drive that you can use that's through Google, and it's super free. And so you'll see that it's my drive, Tabletop Terrors, online games, Dragon Grin Crux, Session 3, Ghosts of Lightfall. This seems like a lot. Like, what the heck? Well, Tabletop Terrors has all of the stuff that James and I do on there. Online games, in the online games folder, that's where you're basically going to find your Provoker's notes, Sir Celine notes. Any game that I'm in has its subfolder right here. So this is my campaign, Dragon Grin Crux. Now, technically, this campaign is as of yet unnamed because Crux was the name of the first session. Now, huge spoilers. This entire thing is going to be drawing on previous sessions. So if you haven't watched sessions 1 and 2, or if you haven't watched session 3 of the Dragon Grin campaign, this is going to be full of spoilers. So inside my campaign folder, I make my session 3 folder. Now, this is why I call it the 3-bucket method, because what I'm finding in a 4-hour span with about 4 or 5 players, I want 3 major linchpins, 3 major scenes, so to speak. So this differs from your 5-room dungeon because I am not going to prep 5 rooms where to me, whenever I've done that, it's cool, but I always run short on time. I talk a lot. My players tend to role play, and so this is good. So to me, I'm kind of distilling this down. So let's just jump in, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So the first thing I'm going to do, the reason why I call it the 3-bucket method is I'm going to go here, new Google Docs, create this in a shared folder. Yes, because I share this folder with James. So a new document pops up. So I'm just going to come up here to the untitled document, and I'm going to type in bucket 1. You're going to hear me type because the way my mic is set up, you're going to hear that dunk. So I'm sorry about that in advance. Then I'm going to close that. And you're going to see it appear here in a second. Boom, bucket 1. Now, let's do bucket 2. And I'm going to show you a trick. If you type in, let's do that. And then you click the untitled document here. Hey, auto-populates. So bucket 2. And then I close that. And now I have bucket 2. Then I'm going to go ahead and make bucket 3. Now, if you're interested in the Hollywood formula, meaning, the kind of writing formula where there's a beginning, middle, and end, there's a rising action, like the 3-act structure, whatever you want to call it, this is sort of like that. Very, very loose, okay? Now, these are my main buckets, but there are going to be some things that I don't write down because all week, and I'll actually stop screen sharing for this part. I think this is really important. Session prep begins when the last session ends and however quickly inspiration starts striking you. For me, it's usually like take a deep breath, play in a couple other games, focus on other stuff. And so I'm not even thinking about session prep for a little while. But step one of any session prep to me is continuing to stay inspired and letting it ruminate in your mind. Those ideas that come into your idea net, you see it on, you're watching a movie and you go, oh, that's a cool scene. Boom, I make a note on my phone, or I just make a mental note and I just go, oh, that's cool. All right. So my sessions tend to take shape in my mind first. But I think that if you're unsure and you don't know where to start, which is what a lot of game masters do, they're like, all right, that session was cool, but what next? I think it's important to start out by saying, what do you want the session's goal to be? And I don't mean what magic item do you want them to find or who's the villain. No. Take a step back from that. What I'm saying is you're playing a game and you're running a collaborative story for multiple people. What do you want the goal? What's the feel? What's the theme? What's the idea? What's the kind of thing you're like, okay, if it's not progressing the story forward, why are you doing it? So what do I want to achieve? Okay, so here's an example of that. For me, the first 2 sessions of this Dragongrin campaign were really cool, but they were huge in scope, sweeping and epic, almost more like finales than they were like session 1s and 2s. I started out, my players were level 0, which is a whole nother video, but essentially it means they're level 1, but we slowly let them realize their powers as they go through the first session, it's a lot of fun. It creates an immediate sense of progression. The reason why I'm telling you that I went so big and that it was kind of like, whoa, is that the only place I have to go now after session 1 and session 2 is down and zooming in, because it can't get any bigger. You can't sustain that kind of thing. In session 1, I started off with my players being crucified. They had to get off the crosses, murder their captors or escape, and then they went down a hill, had to fight this big dude, and then were surrounded by a bunch of goblins. That's the end of the session. The next session, these goblins turn out to be led by this construct called a Tome Heart, and it turns out that they're good guys. So I tricked my players, like a good game master. No, I turned it on its ear and said, do you serve the dismembered lord? Well, that's the big bad in my world, or our world. And one of the players, Matt Click, his rogue was like, yes, we do. And I basically was like, oh, wrong answer. We're good guys. All that to say, the next thing that happened in the game was these huge constructs called War Makers showed up in a nearby town and decimated it. And then our world's Avengers sort of showed up. And what I did was I let the players play as these bad guys. So they were these War Makers. Really cool. They did an awesome job. And the session overall, I think, really laid the foundation for what Dragongrin is like. These huge epic events that happen outside the scope of the little baby, session 1, level 1 characters. The issue is, upon looking at it further, is that I realized that while a lot of it was theater of the mind and it was really cool, I don't regret it. But if I would change one thing, it's that these characters haven't gotten to really play their characters at level 1 yet. So I told you all that to tell you that for me, basing it on the last 2 sessions, that's what you do. Just think, okay, what happened in the last 2 sessions and where do we go next? To me, my goal is to zoom in and make this feel like some good old-fashioned level 1 gritty Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. So that's my vibe. That's my idea. That's what I'm really trying to accomplish here. And so everything I do should sort of fit into that. I think that, well, and I'll kind of show you. Here's the next part, and here's where the gap happens, I think, because there's prep, and then there's the ideas that I was telling you about that you kind of think about. These ideas I just came up with. So if you're like, hey, how did you get from I want to play good old-fashioned D&D to the next part. That's your idea net. That's your day-to-day inspiration, reading books, getting ideas from movies, just having ideas from real world, wherever you're getting these ideas. You figure out, okay, I have 3 buckets to work with. And I'm going to go back to the screen sharing here. I have 3 buckets to work with. And I'm going to show you kind of where I'm at. Let's just go with that. So I'm going to screen share here. I'm going to go back to my, my Google Docs. Now, the name of this session is called Ghosts of Lightfall. Now, what does that mean? At the time, I had no idea. I do this thing where I like to write checks that I then have to cash. It can be tricky, you know, because you're like, well, what's this session going to be about? So occasionally I'll have the session idea and then name it. But very often I will have I'll come up with a name and then go, okay, what am I going to make to fit that name? So Ghosts of Lightfall. I thought that after this huge sweeping, epic scale first 2 sessions where these characters were in dire danger and they essentially were in a situation where some of the most threatening things that could happen in the world started happening to them. So to me, I think that the next phase was scaling it down and making them feel small. I want to make them feel inconsequential. These huge events happened. These big things happened. And it doesn't matter that they're even alive still. I thought that was terrifying. And I thought that that came up with kind of a way to flavor the world, which is in Dragon Grin, there are these epic wheels in motion all about you. And you're not even a cog. You're just a tiny little baby. So the first bucket, what I decided was, I was like, okay, I want to show them just surviving. So for now, I don't have to know what this is going to be about. I don't know. I'm going to do this step at a time. So I'm going to rename this bucket just surviving. Now this will change. Whoa. This will change as we go. But now I know that this bucket, this first scene, and if you want so that it stays in order, you can number them. That means that I wanted the first scene to not be sweeping or epic. It's how are you finding shelter? How are you finding food? I wanted to put a little time between these epic events where these war makers invaded this town and the Copper Jackal showed up. And so I wanted to make it about 3 weeks from now. But I don't want to get too deep into that. I don't know what these other 2 buckets are going to be yet. I just know that I want to make sure that these characters have an opportunity to play their level 1 character sheets and feel like they're in a game of D&D. With that said, let's jump into just surviving. All right. So now, what do I need to do here? What do I have on my mind? I'm like, oh, well, just surviving. Well, I think that, and again, I'm just kind of making this up as I go along, so there's no wrong way to do this. Well, let me say this. I will give you a tip, though. Coming in here and writing a bunch of paragraphs probably isn't my style. So I'm not going to be like, and then, Then I do is I'm going to come in here and do some bullet points. So the first thing is the environment. Well, no, actually, let me go ahead and say, what are they surviving? Now, there are a couple of different angles to go here, okay? So there are like game mechanics of survival. There are character, I guess, psyches. You know, so you got to think about the characters. And then aftermath. So like, what are they surviving? I'm just writing, oh, that's not how you spell mechanics. Thank you, squiggly red line. You always do your work. So I'm going to open up the session with a survival scene. So what are they surviving? In Dragon Grin, food, water, that kind of stuff isn't so easy to come by, especially if you've sort of been outcast. So to me, in the first session, they were crucified. I want to make it so that other people would probably avoid them because they're kind of on the run at this point. But the second thing is that all of these characters are going to be kind of laying low because they don't even know why they were crucified. This sort of jerkwater named Donovan gave them very cryptic reasons why, but at the time and still now, they really don't know. So I would say, okay, so under game mechanics, I'm not going to put anything just yet. Under character psyches, I'm just going to put a couple of quick notes. So let's do this. They are lying low. It's laying low. Laying low, afraid. They are being hunted. Okay, so well, let me finish this little section, then I'll tell you why I'm typing this stuff. Okay, here's another thing I want to play with. With an abundance of time, the imagination runs wild. They've been on the lam for 3 weeks. Imagine being out of contact with everyone you know and love for 3 weeks. Okay, so that's why I'm going to put that there. So the reason why I'm putting this stuff here is because when I'm running the session, I'm going to open this document when I get to this part, this first bucket. I'm going to basically say, okay, you're laying low, you're afraid of being hunted. How does that make you feel? With an abundance of time, the imagination runs wild. So what am I going to do? I'm going to use this note to ask one of the players, you know, hey, what does it feel like to have not seen your father for 3 weeks? And just go with that. Now, notice I didn't say, what are you doing? What are you doing? Well, they're walking, they're skulking, they're camping, you know, out of sight, away from roads, traveling at night, sleeping in the day kind of thing, you know. So that's why I'm putting this stuff. They're laying low, they're afraid of being hunted. With an abundance of time, the imagination runs wild. So this is just some little notes of what I'm surviving. As far as game mechanics, they're level 1, but I want them to feel like they're in danger, okay? So I'm going to give them 1 level of exhaustion. Whoa, come on, buddy. So I'm going to give them 1 level of exhaustion. That means disadvantage on ability. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to give them 1 level of exhaustion. So that's the game mechanic portion of it. Again, what am I even doing here? I'm trying to think, okay, this first bucket is them surviving. I'm not thinking about the middle. I'm not thinking about the end. I'm not thinking about the plot. I'm just making a scene. Now for Aftermath, what I'm trying to do is, what happened? War makers, well, no, let's say this. They were crucified. War makers destroyed a city before their eyes. Now, why am I putting this here? Those are just a couple little bullets for me. Again, I'm going to draw on this while I'm kind of improv in the session, because as I work through, I'll probably start by telling them they have a level of exhaustion after a little bit of a description so that they'll know. Then I'm going to ask them what they're thinking. And as they tell me what they're thinking, I'm going to seed this stuff in between as I go from player to player, something like that. So as I kind of go, you know, hey, what are you thinking, Diggs? Oh, I'm thinking such, I'm thinking such, I'm thinking this, that, and the other. You know, I'll say, yeah, this is what it feels like to be hunted. You know, you've been laying low for 3 weeks and it's wearing on you. It's wearing on your mind. And I just start kind of going with that and going with it. But this gives me the idea, okay, I want to hit on this. What else? With abundance of time, you know, the imagination run wild. So once Diggs is done, I go over and I say, Garrick, which is Nate's character. I'm like, you know, how do you feel? You know, just kind of, you know, what are you thinking? That kind of stuff. And as he goes, I'll say, yeah, you know, your imagination's running wild. You know, you can't help but think about, and then I'll start seeding things, acting like his conscience or his psyche, just kind of putting stuff in his mind because it's going to change the whole feel of the scene. So again, this is one of the buckets. It's like, wait, hold on. I thought you were prepping for D&D. I am. I want to create a mood and a tone right away when we open the game. Okay. This is how I do that. So I just try to think of, okay, and you could probably stick to like 3 things, you know. But in addition to this, in addition to game mechanics and character psyches and the aftermath, I'm going to stop sharing here and show you this for a moment. Remember, what was my initial design goal? Because everything I did there was cool. It's cool, but it doesn't feel like a good old-fashioned session of D&D 5th edition. It's still pretty narrative, which I want to do. It's very tone-driven. This right now is a story. I want to bring more of the game into it. So how am I going to do that? Well, I want to bring in some challenges that are going to tax the player's character sheets. So that first little bit of my bucket is I'm kind of just spitballing and kind of say, okay, this is the tone, this kind of mood I want to go for. But now I want to tie some sort of challenge to this. And specifically in this game, you're probably going to see me tie some sort of challenge to each one of the buckets because I want them to finish this game having felt like they played some good old-fashioned D&D, some dice rolling, some attack rolls, some skill checks, those kinds of things. Now, excuse me, I want to say one thing. This first bucket that I shared right here, this first bucket doesn't have to be words. That's kind of the beauty of this. This could be an image. Like if you were running a game and your entire session goal was, I want the players to fear the villain, you know, I would say, okay, fear the villain. Well, how's that? I would say, see the effects the villain has. And then I would put 3 images of just raised, burning villages or scenes of battle and carnage and things like that. I've written nothing at that point. So again, if my first bucket was see villains effects, man, I cannot spell right now today. I can't spell ever, but it's just more evident when I'm being recorded. See villains effects. Okay, what would I do? Maybe I put 3 images there. Maybe I put a speech that I found online. Maybe I put, these buckets can hold anything. Okay, so that's huge. I'm going to go ahead and Control Z all this stuff. But for me, my bucket is, whoa, I am realizing that you cannot. Look at me. Look at me. So, just surviving. But this is my bucket. So what you can do is whatever inspires you, put whatever you want in the bucket. Why do I call it the 3 bucket system? Well, because I'm going to go from this bucket to this bucket to this bucket. Those are the 3 pillars that I want to hit. And I realized that I wasn't screen sharing when I clicked on it, but you get what I'm saying. I want to go bucket 1, bucket 2, and bucket 3. Now, for me, this is another key important part of this method. I am not going to go too deep into part 1 yet. I just wanted to get that rough skeleton. So now I want to move on to bucket 2, meaning I'm not going to go, okay, well, here's the skill challenge. Here's this. I just know in my mind, and let me make a little note for myself. Tax the players' character sheets so that I remember, okay, I want the session to feel like good old-fashioned D&D, but I'm not making that choice yet. Okay, I'm not going that deep because I think it's important to get a skeleton going first and then slowly fill the buckets as I have opportunity. If you try to fill just the one bucket, it becomes very difficult to then inform the next bucket and inform the next bucket. And I think that is one of the biggest session prep gotchas is you try to prep one scene in hyper detail, then go on to the next one. Well, what are you doing? Well, you have to refer to that first one, and now there's this fractal chain of events that has to happen and all. And it's like, I'm going to make sure that I have a thin skeleton that goes across the whole thing first. So let me go ahead and screen share, and we're going to move on to bucket 2, and I'll kind of give you guys an idea of what I'm doing here. So did I screen share yet? Let me do that. Let me cancel what I did so you can see here. So I just right-clicked on this, and I'm going to hit rename. I'm going to rename this 02. Now, this bucket, I already know what I want this to be. Okay? I want this to be a dungeon crawl. I know that because I want it to feel like classic D&D. So bucket 2 is a dungeon crawl. Okay. So I double click. Boom. I've got my blank dungeon crawl here. All right. So to feel like the players have this mini baby 2-room dungeon. And when I say a 2-room dungeon, I basically know that I'm going to kind of tax some of their resources for just surviving. Here, they're going to already have exhaustion and all that stuff. So I kind of want to get them feeling like they're in trouble. And that's a really cool thing to do, is have them feel like they're going to die, or drop somebody where they have 0 hit points. Understand they may actually die, and you have to be ready for that. But so I know I'm going to tax them pretty hard here. So to me, the first element, like here, what I'm going to do is I need to work in a long or short rest. So that is a big element here. Something else, I think this is going to be a good scene for lore and character. Man, I'm killing it. Character role play. And then it's also going to be, let's say, I'm just going to call it ratchet up the tension. That's it. It's that easy. Well, wait, what dungeon? What's it? I don't know yet. You know why? Because I want to hit my goals first. What am I trying to do? I have been in the situation where I've tried this before, and I try to say, okay, I'm going to do a dungeon crawl. Dwarves built this dungeon, and it's this, and it's this, and it's this. And the reason, I'm going to stop sharing for this so you can see me here. The reason why that doesn't work is because you don't have a goal in mind. This is goal-oriented prep. And what do I mean? I don't mean character goals. I don't mean PC goals. That all plays in later. But when I'm building the skeleton, as a game master, what kind of game am I trying to run? So I don't care about the details yet. What I care about, and I'll screen share again, because this is more important to me, is I need to have my players, because it's a game, they have to have a long or short rest, or they're very likely to die in the next thing I throw at them. So that has to happen. Lore and character roleplay. Since I'm going to hit them in this just surviving section with like, how do you feel and all this other stuff, that's probably going to be pretty internal. There might be, like, my players are really good, especially Barker and Matt are very good at kind of like passing the ball to someone else. Like if I say, what are you thinking about? They'll probably talk to another character. That's a game master's dream. But I have to assume that based on this, character psyches and the aftermath of what they're going through, that's kind of just a setup for them to talk about their characters and get back into character. It's been like a month and change or more since we played. So this lore and character roleplay, what I want to do is reveal, whoa, buddies, I'm sorry, everybody. Reveal a little bit about the world of Dragon Grin. I want them to strengthen character bonds. That's it. I'm going to leave it there. So ideally, in this dungeon crawl scene, okay, I want those two things to happen. Now, this long or short rest, well, how do I do that? I'm going to have to provide safe place that will make sense for them to rest in. Players never do what you want, so you have to give them strong indicators that you're offering them a resource as a game master. Now, it's up to them if they want to ignore this long or short rest. I'm not going to railroad them or force them to do it, but I'm going to offer them the resource. If they pass it up, I'm not going to make it cryptic. They're going to understand, like, hey, this is a great place if you wanted to hunker down. I mean, I'll probably say something just like that. Like, if you were going to rest, this would probably be as good of a place as any to do it. And again, we're playing a game, we're telling a collaborative story that has challenges involved. So hopefully they'll take that as a cue to say, okay, we should rest. The game master is giving us the signal that we should rest. Is that railroady? I don't know. I'm going to do it. So I don't know. I don't think it's, yeah, it is what it is. That's what I'm going to do. So when you're making your buckets, you don't have to do that. But let me go ahead and I'm going to share again here. So ratchet up the tension. Well, how am I going to ratchet up the tension? What I want is, so this is what I mean by ratchet up the tension. Remind characters of goals that they're failing at. Okay? And I'm also going to put the characters in immediate and inarguable danger. So what do I mean by reminding the characters of goals that they're failing at? So in this first bucket here, we talked about, you know, their psyches and, oh, this is how I feel. This is how I feel. Now, the second bucket, hopefully there's some inter-character role play and this kind of stuff. What I'd like when I ratchet up the tension, what I hope will happen is one of them will stand guard and the others will, they're going to stand watch. Or sorry, sleep while one stands watch. I have a character right now who Nate has this, he's a warlock, okay? And he has this patron who's this beautiful sort of fey mistress. So I thought I was going to mess with him, and I made his go-between. So he doesn't get to talk to the main deity. I thought that was a really interesting concept. Is it's a warlock, doesn't commune immediately with their patron. He's a low level. He just started. You're proving yourself. You're a grunt. You talk to the middleman. And so I thought this really cool character named Piotr, or Piotr, P-I-O-T-R, Piotr. And the idea is Nate hasn't, I'm going to make it so that Nate hasn't seen Piotr in 3 weeks. And what I want is I'm going to use that as a couple of things. You make a deal with a patron, with a deity, or some great power, it comes at a cost. I want Nate to feel that cost, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the players, when I say ratchet up the tension by helping them remember things they failed at, my framing device for this is I'm going to have the warlock patron essentially give them nightmares. So this middleman, rather, this Piotr, is going to be around, and I don't know how and when, but I love the visual of really like stirring his finger in the character's brains. And I would like it if Garrick doesn't see this or nobody sees this until it's too late. And basically what this warlock's, what Piotr is doing is making them think about awful things. Cassie's playing a character named Kathleen whose sister is missing. So I want to give her a nightmare about that. And I don't mean a nightmare like, I'm not going to do the whole trippy thing where everyone gets a dream sequence, but it's just going to be, in fact, I might just, let me go back to the screen here and jot some of this down. So, all right, so what I'm going to do is remind the characters of goals they're failing at. I hit tab, so it starts another little bullet here, and I'll put Piotr is stirring the pot. Finger stirring their brains. Then what I'm going to do is say, Cassie. Now, I'm not going to put their character names here because in the moment, I want to be able to look at my players' names. So Cassie, sister is missing. Nate, he was supposed to, money didn't make it to tax collector. So these are all things that you're going to find out probably after the game. But Nate's character, one of the things he was supposed to do is he was on his way to bring money to essentially pay off some taxes for his father's land. Well, then he got crucified and the money got taken. So everyone assumed he just ran off with the money. So, and then like for Diggs, his son is missing. And then Rudy, his past is haunting him. His past is resurfacing because I don't want to choose how he feels about it. So I changed haunting him to resurfacing. Rudy, and then we're going to do Ephraim, which I did exactly what I said I was going to do. Guys, you really got to make sure you don't do this. You got to make sure, and then I do it. Wow. All right, and then Matt. And Matt's character, Ephraim, is, I would say, reckoning. No. Not reconciling. Yeah, I guess reconciling with the fact that he is a magicker and just killed a man. So that's a big deal. Whoa. That's a big deal. So what I'm going to do is, I might not do all of these, but I want to remind the characters of some of these bigger things. Now, they might mention them here. If that's the case, I'm just going to poke them quickly here. But what I want to do to remind myself is short bursts of words. Here's an example. So Cassie, her sister, is missing. I'm going to sneeze. I'm going to attempt to get to the mic in time to mute it. Whew, all right. So with Cassie, I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by ratcheting up the tension here. And hopefully this isn't boring. Hopefully this is helpful to you guys. And filling up these buckets, it's going to help me tonight. I purposely didn't do this because I wanted to do it live on air. So I have some character notes that I've made from Facebook chats. But so anyway, in this scene, I want them to kind of be, and I'm not going to force it, so I don't want to put too many specifics as to how it will occur. But I want Piotr to be stirring the pot. And basically what Cassie's going to see is something like her sister standing in an enormous skeletal hand. And she's going to be saying one phrase over and over. So I'm not going to say, Cassie, you see your sister. What I would do by short bursts of words so that the narrative changes and it feels different, it feels like something that's being maybe poked in their heads, I would say, your sister. You see her. It's dark. She's standing. An enormous skeletal hand lurches. She screams. Something like that. So I can do that with each of the characters. What is that going to do? It's going to create a really weird effect that's not going to sound like, hey, just as a game master, want to remind you that you're really bummed out that your sister's missing. So, you know, by doing that, I'm going to create an actual sense and tone. I think that's all I'm going to do for now. You're like, well, wait, you still got to do a dungeon crawl. I do. I'm going to do that here in a minute. So now, just like I did over here, I'm going to copy and paste this because one of my main design goals is making this feel like a good old-fashioned 5th edition game of D&D. I'm going to tax the player's character sheets. And let me talk to you guys about this for a second. So far, none of what I've done feels like a good old-fashioned game of D&D. That's because I feel like I can reskin skill challenges, monster fights, and encounters to be anything I need them to be in the universe. But doing a sequel emotionally to the last session that answers questions and sort of continues character promises, that's a really difficult thing to do. So for me, I'm going to nail all these little pieces in the buckets. Like, okay, here are the kind of character moments or the vibes, the tones that I'm looking for. And then from there, I'm going to drop in some skill challenges or some puzzles or stuff like that, because to me, that's the easy part. But you drop them in front of a puzzle and you wonder why the puzzle falls flat. It could be the best puzzle in the world, but it's because there's no emotional weight surrounding the rest of the scene, right? So let's go back. Let's say this second part here, this dungeon crawl here, let's say I want to put a puzzle in here. Okay. So now I want this second thing to be a puzzle. So this first, like, why are they surviving? The game mechanics, exhaustion, this kind of stuff. Before they hop into the dungeon crawl. So let's say this is going to tax their hit points and stuff. Maybe it won't be an outright combat. I want it to maybe be like an environment thing. But this second one, if it's a puzzle, think about it. If I just put a puzzle in front of them and said, here's the thing, do this, try this, do this. And I might even make it a skill challenge, you know, to really make it feel D&D-esque, where it's just like roll some dice. You could take any skill challenge that exists and it might be awesome. But if I first do this stuff, give them a safe place to rest in, give them a little lore about Dragongrin, Strengthen the character bonds. Let them talk to each other. Let that happen. Ratchet up the tension as they're sleeping or resting. Have Piotr stir the pot. Now, all of this context is added to this skill challenge, meaning the bonds that they formed here are going to inform this. These things that make them feel terrible as a character are going to inform this. Maybe as role players, they're going to decide that they're not going to do so well on their role for if part of this is a wisdom save or something, they might not make it because they're like, no, I'm racked with guilt for my money didn't make it to the tax collector. Now my dad's farm is being repossessed. Those kinds of things can play a factor in there. So to me, that's why I'm going through and making it these buckets to where it's like, okay, what is the tone? Now we're going to go to bucket number 3. So it's going to be just surviving this environmental thing where I kind of imagine them like wandering through a canyon, kind of like trying to make do with what they can. Then the second one, they come upon this sort of dilapidated dungeon. It's a dungeon crawl. I want them to kind of go through like a skill challenge and then like a combat, maybe something like spiders are always fun. There's actually a Drunkens and Dragons encounter I've been meaning to run on the Drunkens and Dragons channel that he does. I might use that and put it into the game. Then bucket number 3, what do I want to do? What do I want to make bucket number 3? I like the idea that this one is going to be, we'll call it reintegrating into society. Now, that sounds boring, but we're just surviving. We're stumbling through this chasm. Oh no, things are happening. The environment. Okay, we're safe. Oh no, we got to make it through this dungeon. This last one, I'd like it to be like they emerge from the dungeon if they survive, and a few miles down the road, they find a tavern or an inn. I want the players to markedly feel some sort of resolution after they were crucified. Then they had all this stuff happen to them in front of their eyes. They had this crazy stuff. I want to give the character some sort of center. If it keeps reeling, if I keep throwing more and more and more stuff at them, that is cool to create an effect. Like you can make them feel harried and, disheveled and discombobulated by keeping on throwing challenge after challenge. I want to give them a sense of resolution. I want to kind of bookend. This is the end of them being crucified. What's the next chapter? Like, what happens next? How do I pull them into the world? So, reintegrating society. Here, let me slide this in order. Woo, woo. So, bucket number 3. Watch, I'm going to paste this down here. It's going to be spelled wrong. Oh, big bucks, no whammies. So, the dungeon crawl, this is reintegrating the society. Here's what I want. And I had this thought. This is one of the reasons why I want to put this here. So what are some like 3 major goals of this scene that I want to kind of get across? The first one is nobody cares. I think that's awful. But it's in Dragon Grin, they were all just crucified. Oh no. And then they were in the wilderness for 3 weeks. And I would say many people conspicuously, nope, that's not even close. Didn't. Oh, now you see why Matt at Absolute Tabletop has such a hard job. He's the editor. Many people conspicuously didn't notice. I want there to be some people didn't know they were gone. Like, that's awful. It's like, oh, hey, where you been? Like, what? To me, that lessens it, and it's just the exact flavor of Dragon Grin. I probably should have started with this. In Dragon Grin, I should have started this way at the beginning, but I assumed people have seen the first 2 sessions. Dragon Grin is a world where evil rules. The big bad won, and so his shadow extends throughout the land, and so the bad guys are in power. Anyway, many people conspicuously didn't notice. So that's the first thing. Nobody cares. And then I want to make sure that the characters... Oh, okay. So the characters, nobody cares. But here's one of the things that I want to happen. Is tavern scene. Notice what I've done here. I'm coming full circle on purpose. So we haven't had they all meet in the tavern. That didn't happen. in these games. This was very unorthodox as far as how they began, their journey, the session, so on. So I like the idea that we're coming full circle and we're ending on a tavern scene. So one of the things I wanted to do in this tavern scene, I'm not sure what though, bring one of the characters' pasts into play. I don't know who, but I want somebody at this tavern scene. So as things go and things sort of kind of settle, someone notices a character and their past is pulled right in front of them. So, oh, big breath. We get to go to this tavern here. One of the characters' past comes into play. One of the other things I want to put under this tavern scene is an actual sense of comfort, albeit slight. So, meaning I want to give them a quick, hey, warm my tootsies by the fire, or, you know, they get a drink and it's not the best drink, but it's like, oh, I want them to feel a noticeable, like, because here's why, what I believe, and this will be, actually, I'm going to put this in between. What I believe will happen when I give them this actual sense of comfort, which, again, huge disclaimer, the players probably won't do any of this stuff. Let's all be honest. 10% of this stuff is probably going to happen. The rest I'm going to make up and they'll make up. But what I think this will do by bookending it and letting them come in like this, I believe, let's see here. I believe that this will solidify them as an adventuring party. So this is going to be what most people hope happens in the tavern. Like, yeah, let's go on let's do this together. So I want to give them a unifying cause. Now, this is huge. This is just a note for me. Okay, I want to talk to you while I say this. I'm not going to railroad them and say, in the tavern, it's where you're going to realize that you all want to help Diggs find his son. No, I'm going to let them choose the unifying cause, but I want to give them the environment. I want to make the probability higher and in my favor that they will feel this tone. So we're going to go through and I'm going to start filling these buckets more and more, but I want to finish this last bucket with something that I think is really cool to do in a session, which is the final thing. So it's nobody cares. I want to make it a tavern scene. Cliffhanger. I don't know what, but somehow end the session with a cliffhanger that leaves the opening of the next session open-ended. Hold on, how do I word this? Somehow end the session with a cliffhanger that leads into the next session. Okay, so to me, that's important. Now, this can be anything. Well, how do you make a good cliffhanger? Well, quick Cliff's notes on how to make a good cliffhanger is, what can I pull from session 1 or 2, or even the beginning of session 3, that now hits them in the face? What's the sequel to some bad choice they made, or someone they stabbed, or a thing that they tried that didn't go ideally? The consequences now come up here, but instead of saying roll initiative, I say, and that's where we're going to end it. Okay? So this is huge because all I have to do is, let's go back here. You know, if I'm looking through here, what you're looking at, what they're surviving, the dungeon crawl, this stuff, this is my cliffhanger fuel for session 4. Now, I'm not prepping session 4 right now, but in other words, when I'm prepping session 4, if I use this method, this 3-bucket method, what I'm going to do is, what did they mess with in this place, in this dungeon? What did they mess with that I can bring back that's going to bite them in the face? Was it a holy relic? Did they profane an altar and now there are Templars after them? Whatever it is, okay? So that is the overall 3-bucket method. Now I'm going to go through. I'm going to continue to do this. Now my daughter's still asleep, so we're in good shape. But if nothing else, if I have to end short, that gets you part of the way there. The rest is a lot of improv. It's dependent on how my gaming style, I can improv fairly easily. So extra notes for me are just gravy at this point, but they can be helpful. And I can prep extra notes and not be locked into them. Some, when they prep all these extra notes, they catch themselves reading and getting lost. So this next part is going to be fleshing it out. I've got the structure. I've got the skeleton. I've got the buckets are like halfway full what I want. Now it's time to start filling them up with the little details and so on. In fact, let's use this analogy. Have you ever heard or seen or heard, it's an inspirational message where a teacher stands in front of a classroom with a jar and then basically fills the jar with sand and then takes a bunch of rocks and tries to fit the rocks in the jar. And it doesn't work, right? But if you fill the jar with the sand first, the rocks don't fit. But if you put the rocks in first and then put the sand in, the sand kind of fills around the rocks. The stuff that I just did, these anchor points, those are the rocks, right? So now I'm going to fill the jars or the buckets, the 3 buckets with sand. So let me go ahead and I'm going to screen share again. This is the point where I keep going to ask if you have any questions, but no one's here. It's me streaming all by myself. All right. So this part gets a little weird because there's not really an order to it. So if I'm looking at all these right here and I go, all right, I can go in order, right? I can totally go in order. But I might not. I might just go and say, okay, well, what's inspiring me? So I also need to figure out why the session's called Ghosts of Lightfall. I better do that first. All right, so where do I want the characters to see? The reason why I wanted to call it Ghosts of Lightfall, let me talk to you here for a second again. Lightfall is an event in our campaign world, which is essentially the monumental, largest battle. It wasn't even maybe the largest, but it was the most pivotal battle between good and evil where the bad guys won definitively. If you're on a different side of history, they call it the Dawn of Truth. So rebels and charlatans and what would be considered heretics call it Lightfall. If you're on the side of evil, or to the common person, just normal life as it is right now, they call it the Dawn of Truth. I thought it would be great to have these characters come face to face with an old battlefield of Lightfall. So whether that's in the dungeon crawl, it's not going to be in the tavern. So it's going to be in either one of those first 2 locations. So the Ghosts of Lightfall is coming face to face that occurred, but you've probably never had direct contact with. Now, each of the characters has their own past and they have their own, and I'll let them choose how familiar they are with the things that I put in front of them. But I want you to consider this as like, if you see, a battleground where it's still a mess of just, blown up shells of tanks and all that. Like if you went to a modern day preserved site where there was a great battle, that would kind of be the thing. No one's cleaning this stuff up. So I want it horrific, but I want to tone down. I don't want it to just be like, hey, Dragon Grin is the worst all the time, because it is. But if it's the worst all the time, and you never have dynamics, then it can never be evil. It just becomes the norm, which again is a play style, but they're level 1. So I kind of want to dial things back where this is horrific, but I'm probably not going to show sadistic stuff here or brutal stuff. I just want it to be like they come on this like half buried battlefield from the Battle of Lightfall or one of the battles of Lightfall. So let's decide where I'm going to do that. And the reason why it's called Ghosts of Lightfall is because I want them to kind of see face to face. I think a good example, I was talking this through with Matt Click from A Fistful of Dice, And he said, I'm like someone who was born after 9/11. They're being taught of the horrors, but they didn't experience them like we did. The whole, like, where were you when it happened? And I think that's a pretty big distinction, you know? And so you're taught of Lightfall. Maybe you're raised to believe in the dawn of truth. So I'm going to make these characters reconcile what they actually see with what they think they believe. So let's come in here and say, all right, Ghosts of Lightfall. I think it makes sense to do the dungeon crawl. Here's my issue with that. The way that this works, this makes the most sense. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I want to decide what I want this to be, because this is the opener, and that's got to be important. It sets the tone for the whole game. So after I've done this kind of like these vibes up here, now I'll do this in all caps, and it'll just say challenges. No, that is not. I swear I spell better than this. Challenges and threats. And so this is going to be the actual like mechanics. I'm just pasting this into each one of the docs. So this is going to be the actual mechanics, so that I know, okay, this isn't just going to be narrative, because I feel like if there was one thing I wish I would have changed about session 2, is it was so heavily narrative that there was no 5th edition D&D involved. I mean, I genuinely don't even think we used character sheets, because I was like, yeah, let's do theater of the mind and let's just narrative combat. And it's like, while that's cool, I want to do the opposite here. So just surviving. So the challenge and threat here, what I want it to be is the environment. We talked about this. So I want it to be the, wow, I promise I'm not this bad. Oh, buddy, listen. Oh, people make fun of me for a lot, but this is going to be the new one. And me mentioning it so many times is going to make it worse. So you all do the same thing. Yeah, get out of your glass house, you spell checkers. All of our red squiggly lines are tired. All of them. Anyway, my point is, the challenge or threat here is the environment. I want it to be a scene where they're like lumbering with one level of exhaustion, kind of, you know, through the heat of the day. They're trying to get to civilization. They've been off the grid for 3 weeks. They've kind of been living off the land, maybe off of just some basic stuff they can catch and forage. And they kind of, they're not as aware, and they stumble onto this place where it's a battle that occurred in Lightfall. So the environment, to me, something we haven't seen yet in my game. We've hinted at it, we've seen, you know, etc. It seems kind of like the basic, like the given, like the trope, like, hey, but I think they need to face a bleak storm, because we have not seen a bleak storm in one of my games yet like this. So for me, what I'm going to do is decide what that means. So what is a bleak storm? In our world, the arcane magic is powered by this red energy called the bleak that exists northward. It's a direction called bleakward, and spills out into the realm in these arcane thunderstorms and hurricanes, just where this red energy can appear out of nowhere, and it's arcane and, you know, blows it up. So the environment, I want it to be a bleak storm. You know what? Okay, I just had an idea. Okay, so here's what the question that popped into my mind. I'm doing this, and I'm like, all right, what makes a bleak storm different than a regular storm? Well, it's arcane. It's crazy. Like, stuff happens. Okay. I've got it now. This is going to be Ghosts of Lightfall. Here's why. This is kind of cool, I think. As this bleak storm rolls in this environmental challenge, as this bleak storm rolls in, I want it to be them running from the bleak storm. Okay, right? So that's the, like, oh, run from the storm. But I want there to be these, I don't know, these like outer bands. I don't know what I'll call them yet, but these outer bands of a bleak storm that kind of like wisp in and just, they're arcane. They just kind of mess with the area. It's like the first hints of the bleak storm. So like, it seems like dust in the air, but like you'll see trails for your hand. The effects can vary. You could see, I don't know. I just wanted to be like super psychedelic kind of effect when a bleak storm's rolling in. These like, sort of like these glimmer winds or something, whatever we'll call them. But to me, here's what's going to happen. These glimmer winds are going to roll in, and they're going to be like, oh, okay, it's going to feel cool. But then they're like, oh, we probably should find some shelter. Okay, glimmer winds. They're walking through this canyon. But then they blow harder, and these glimmer winds are very strong. And then I'm going to have it so that one of the characters is face-to-face with a knoll. Just this spectral. So let's say glimmer winds. This is where it starts getting just where I'm not even worried about formatting. Glimmer winds, spectral knoll. This wind is causing the past to show itself. Okay, so this wind is causing the past to show itself. So as this glimmer wind blows over this battlefield of Lightfall, they're going to see gnolls versus Uldane dwarves. Uldane, actually, hold on. Got to use an alt code here. Uldane. You know what else, too? I'm making an excuse right now, but it's the truth. If you could see it, my keyboard is like one whole smutchel to the right because the mic is on the table now. So like I keep going to type and my hand is like one over. And I keep hitting caps lock instead of A. Spectral gnolls versus Uldane. So what this is going to happen is that this past sweeps, or this glimmer wind sweeps over them and starts showing them this battle of the past. And I just want to show like these Uldane dwarves versus these gnolls. And it's like, rah. Now they have to run from the bleak storm. So run from the bleak storm. And then what I'm going to do is I'll do in 1d4 rounds. It will be upon them. Okay. So challenges and threats. I'm going to bold this and underline it because this is a mess. I'm just kind of right now I'm just brainstorming. Let's see here. The glimmer winds come through. That's not going to really hurt them. Spectral gnolls versus Uldane. That's kind of dressing. The past shows itself. I'm actually going to make these subheadings of the glimmer winds. So then, bleak storm. Run from the bleak storm. 1d4 rounds. It will be upon them. I have to decide like if they get caught in it. What happens? I won't plan for that. I hope they don't get caught in it because that's a whole nother story. I would have to kind of improv that and get them. It wouldn't be a problem. But you're like, this is railroady. My play style is a little railroady. I let you make choices, but I'm going to let them get to the next challenge I have prepared for them. Where that challenge is and how it's dressed and, you know, et cetera, that's going to change. But the same mechanics that I'm going to prep are going to be there. Anyway, whole nother stream. Okay, here's what I want. This is what I want for this to be dangerous. 1d4. No. Dex save. They're level 1, so we'll say DC 10. Or you take damage. Why? Because these spectral gnolls and dwarves can't hurt you necessarily, but there's just enough mojamming and mustard in their spectral forms that you're taking this damage. I might change it to 1 point of damage. 2 damage. That way I can regulate it. No one's getting dropped. I don't know. I want to make this game more deadly. You know what? Let's do it. Because they have the dex save, so they have an opportunity. Dex save DC 10, or you take 1d4, and I will make it necrotic damage. Actually, I want to make it bleak damage. That's just homebrew right now on the spot, but it's essentially going to act like necrotic. Okay, so that goes to Lightfall. That's how I've got that there. Are you tracking with me so far? Is this, hopefully this isn't super rambly to the point where it's not useful. And I think for me, I want to start doing this because it helps me prep a little more solidly. But what this also does is, I think one of the main things is it shows people, hey, you're not weird. However you do this, whatever you get the end result, that you want, then do it. There's no right or wrong way to do this if you're getting the desired result. Which brings me to 2 other points. Right? Well, 3 more things real quick. 1, change this. As you're going through, do it your way. However you want to do this, do it the biggest. Like, however you want to do this is great. And you can share that with me. Maybe your way will be better than mine, and I'll adopt it. The second thing is, do you notice how I said, look, let me screen share again. I was over here. So I've got Ghost of Lightfall in the Just Surviving doc, but right over here, Dungeon Crawl, I'm pointing out to you, and this is the second point, use other people's encounters. Meaning, I'm not saying steal their stuff, but there are a lot of YouTube channels and there are a lot of resources out there like, hey, like, okay, the roll up and die idea you can steal. Drop that into one of these. Like, just drop that into one of these. For instance, there is a spider encounter, Drunkens and Dragons. There's a spider encounter where he kites the spider around and there's like this blast furnace. It's going to be perfect for where I want the dungeon crawl to take place, because I want it to take place for the Uldane dwarves. And they're sort of like dwarves that live in the mountains of the Uldane mountains and mesas. And they're like monster hunting, sort of, bad to the bone survivalist dwarves. And so this spider encounter is perfect because we're not deep into Uldane territory, but I want to make this dungeon crawl up here an Uldane outpost. So this lore that I want to drop in here, I want to say Uldane Dwarf Outpost. Okay. But the point I'm making is, if you see something on a Fistful of Dice's channel or on one of ours, like one of our videos where it's a splat book roulette or an idea you can steal from Roll Up and Die, this is where you use them. If you frame them in the buckets where you kind of prepare the atmosphere and the tone up here, and then when you get down to the challenges and threats, boom, idea you can steal. Use a trap. Use an encounter. This is what it's for. You don't have to make everything yourself. And even as someone who in my spare time, I write RPG books and I have a YouTube channel with my brother, I still use other people's stuff. That's the point of this community. It's the point of what we're doing. Do it in goodwill. Like, I'm going to give Hankering for an Ale all the credit, mad credit. Like, I'm going to be like, hey, special thanks to Hankering Ale from Dungeons and Dragons. Check out his channel. Like, I'll give him a shout out. So anyway, those 2 things. Remember that. Now, are you bored yet? You want me to keep going? This is where I would normally pull the chat and probably end it. I don't know how long it's been because I don't see a timer. But that is the basic idea. You know what I'll do? I'll actually do one more thing to kind of give you some more ideas as to what I'm looking for here. I'm going to do 2 more things, but it's under this same umbrella, which is, now that I have this rough skeleton, okay, I don't have my challenges or threats for here. Okay, I need to come up with my challenges and threats for here. Anyway, what I was going to say is this is now using books and other resources. I have a Volo's Guide to Monsters. What I'm going to do for this null spot here, this is what I love about Google Docs too. I'm going to double click this, right click it, comment, check out Volo's Guide Knolls. Like that. So now I have a little note for myself, and I might even highlight this and bold it. So you just click bold, and then up here you click the font, and then switch over to highlight, and then make it yellow, whatever color, green, if you want. Doesn't matter. Spectral Knolls. What I'm going to do is check out Volo's Guide, and I'm not going to take and do a whole but I'm going to take like 1 or 2 cool things that they suggest for Knolls, and I'm going to just pepper that in to this battle, these Spectral Knolls. It's not going to be a huge lore dump about the Knolls of Dragongrin. What it's going to be is just adding that one cool, unique identifier so that the Knolls fighting the Uldane dwarves are solid. And I might even look, like if I want to make myself a little note here that says, look up some famously one-sided battles. Like, I want the Knolls to just wreck the Uldane dwarves. And that's sad, but I like the idea of maybe like Well, let's talk about this. Go and find that historical document, Wikipedia or wherever, and I find out one-sided battle. I take it and I plug it in for inspiration. I just copy and paste it. In fact, you know what? Let's do this. Let's just do this. Famously one-sided battles. Now I might not choose this one for my own game. Okay, boom. 10 one-sided battles that alter the course of military history, list of military disasters. I want to go this because I don't want Wikipedia is rock and roll. It's awesome. It's amazing. But I want something with opinion of a writer. So I'm going to click on this. So forgive me if anything shows up that's not safe for work. I don't know what Top Yaps is. Seems pretty legit. But here's an example. Okay, the Battle of Kiev. And then I go through here and say, okay, almost 1 million soldiers, lost. It was the largest encirclement in the military history. So basically, how did they lose these battles? Okay, I'm going to pick one. Let's see here if I recognize a couple of these. Wow, actually, there's one I'm looking for in particular. It's not on here. Oh, yes, it is right here. This is the one I was looking for. It's essentially where encircled the Roman legion and just slowly killed them over the course of hours. So the guys in the center of the circle started killing themselves and stuff. It was really sad. Anyway, I'm going to take this, right? Maybe I'll just take the link. Now, if I was prepping, truth be told, I'd probably just take this. And then what I would do is I'd come in here. I've got this. Now, so I don't clutter all this up and make it like, well, wait, what is all this about, etc. What you can do is I can make this comment over here. So that when I'm running it, this doesn't get all gunked up. But when I get here, I click this or I click this and these pop up. So I click here and it says fought on the 2nd of August. Da, 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 da. Now, if I really, like when I'm done with this stream, what I'll probably do is erase some of this stuff and make it just the bullet points of what I need. So right here, like just for instance, if I say the most significant fact associated with the battle is more than 80% of the losing side was captured or killed by the army of Carthage, something like that, where I just want the bullet points. But that's how you can pull real world stuff and add it to this template where you just boom, do that. So check out Valo's Guide to Monsters and then look up some famously one-sided battles, and I'll just do that for flavor. Now here's the big key. I'm not going to prep the exact facts I want to use about the battle. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just get some historical stuff. So I've got this ballpark blob in my head because I want it. I like to improv, but I'm learning that if I improv within a solid framework, it becomes more liberating and cohesive. And if I let the players fill in the blanks. And so I'm not going to say, and then this is the battlefield and it looked like this. And there were these Uldane dwarves here. And there's, that's the side of prep that I think people get lost in. It's fun for you. It's hard to work into the game. Whole cloth. It can work, but for my play style, that's the kind of prep that would largely never get used. And if I try to shoehorn it in, it's like, oh, well, this feels like I'm shoehorning in the positions of these knolls. Because what happens if this? Prep all this stuff, the flanks and all this, and what if one of my players says, oh, dude, can I describe the formation? There goes all my prep. What do I tell them? No. If I'm what I consider to be a collaborative DM, I would say, yeah, describe the formation. Now they're involved in creating the scene with me. That, to me, is the balance of what to prep and what not to prep. I've got something in the wings here if I need to, so that I'm not totally unprepared. If they're sitting there and they just want me to tell them what the formations are, I at least have some rough stuff here, okay? Which, again, I would probably be I'd be more specific and find something that I was really looking for. That was a less than a minute Google search. But the idea being that if I don't have anything prepped, you can improv it, but now that's one more thing to remember. And it's one more thing to consider when you're, trying to pull things in for the next session and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Oh, okay. Remember how I said I wanted to do a puzzle or skill challenge here? Here's what I want to do in this dungeon crawl. I want this dungeon crawl to be 2 rooms. Remember I said it was going to be a little baby one? So I want it to be room 1, puzzle, or, yeah, it's going to be a puzzle. No, puzzle or skill challenge. I know what I'm going to do. Oh, dude. Okay. See, this wouldn't have come to me. All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll tell you in a second. Room 2. Room 2. And again, check out Drunken and Dragons. Awesome channel. We're collaborating on an encounter building podcast. Should be recording our first episode here soon. Here's what I'm going to do. I want to tell you the tale of the Sentinel Gates. So go back on a Fistful of Dice's YouTube channel to the Umbercloaks game. The Umbercloaks game was a game that was run as a one-shot in the middle of the first Provokers campaign. And I will never forget this because it was so cool. I think, honestly, it's too hard to say, but the romantic in me likes to think that, and I don't mean romantic like, like, you know, Eros love. I mean romantic like romantic ideas, poetic. The dreamer in me likes to think that this is where it really clicked with me how easy it was to collaborate with Matt Click. No joke. Because when he started to, he's like, hey, I'm running this game. And we were just spitballing. And he's like, can I bounce some ideas off you guys? He goes, I'm really looking for, he had this really cool mechanic where, you know, he's like, hey, I want him to do kind of like these skill checks. And if they pass the skill check where it's like a stealth check, they get to just cut the guy's throat, like Assassin's Creed kind of style. And I was like, oh, that's rad. He's like, but I wanted to bounce some stuff off you guys. I want to make, there's this dwarven gate, or, you know, this thing they're supposed to bypass essentially. He's like, I want to make it interesting. And the first thing that jumped out at me, I was like, dude, you know what I've always wanted to do, but I've never been able to do it. And you'll see this in the Trapsmith's book on absolutetabletop.com. I was like, dude, because what he was worried about is they're all going to be rogues. So it was kind of like the next chain of logic where it was like, well, if they're all rogues, it's, what is it, 4 locks? Like, my turn. So I was like, dude, what if you have this gate where multiple things have to be happening at once? So you need to be holding a part open with a strength check while the rogue does his, you know, his lockpick proficiency, or his, you know, basically pick the lock. Blah, blah, blah. So we start going back and forth, and I want to let you know that in this upcoming Stone Rift book, it's been like 2 years now, but we created a roll table to make your own gates like that. These Sentinel gates that the Umbercloaks went up against, taking the concept of multiple skill checks and stuff like that at once. It basically, there's now a D20 table with 4 columns, and you pick the different skill checks, and it's awesome. And I'm going to use that. I'm going to put a Sentinel gate or some variation of that into the game. So that was a long story to tell you. One, you should totally check out Stone Rift. It's coming out December 2nd, 2016, depending on when you watch this video. And 2, it's really, really cool to see that come full circle with one of the first things I ever collaborated with Matt on and felt like, dude, this guy's really easy to work with and we're on the same page. I'm now going to use it against him. Yes. So I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to say, here we go. So in here, boom, I'm going to do this. Oh, I think I hear my daughter waking up. It's perfect because I'm just wrapping up here now. Yep, that's her. I'm coming, baby. So I will wrap up with this because this was going to be the last thing I was going to mention. But so the Sentinel Gate, well, I have the luxury of, I have Stone Rift on our Google Drive over here somewhere. So I'm just going to go into the Google Drive and grab one of the Sentinel Gates and make all 4 players kind of work against them. Now I'm going to reskin it for Dragon Grin because I don't know that the Uldane Dwarves would have Sentinel Gates, but something that the Uldane Dwarves, a trait that they have that makes them unique is that when they die, they turn to stone. They also slowly turn to stone as they age. I think it would be really cool if there was this sort of like, call it like a legacy monument or like a remnant altar or something or whatever, where it's like 4 Uldane Dwarven statues. And that's why it's 4 different skill checks. Because I think I'm going to make it where when they walk in the corridor, these statues kind of step out, and you essentially have to, match wits with 4 of them. So I'm going to do 4 statues. So I'm reskinning this book, which Absolute Tabletop's motto is, we make what we'd use. So I'm going to use it against Matt. Oh man, I hope I get him with it. So that's that. And then for this, it's this really cool, spider encounter. And then what I would do is, YouTube link here, basically. If I was prepping earlier in the week, I just watched the video like 4 or 5 days ago, so it's fresh in my mind. But basically the spider encounter is, it's strong on the front, weak on the back. So it's going to be an opportunity for some of the sneakier people like Matt's character Ephraim to sneak around and do a lot of damage to the back of the spider. There's also a kind of a MacGuffin in there. It's like a glowing spider egg, which I'm thinking I'm going to make yellow. And if you take that from the spider, he'll chase it. So if you kite the spider around and hit it in the back, you can kill it. But the gotcha in this is the spawns. They're these little, like, I forget what he calls them. Pupae, I think? Yeah, pupae. Basically, they hit heavy and they paralyze. So, like, for level 1s, they do 1d4 damage and chance for paralyzation. So it's like we'll make it pretty basic because they're going to be, so DC 11. Or they'll be incapacitated. So, well, I'll just do paralyze. Whoa. So the idea here is that each round, the spider is going to spit out 1d4 of these. They do a d4 damage to level 1s, which is a lot. Maybe I'll do a d6 if I really want to make it deadly. Now I'll do a d4 because I'm going to make the paralyzation as well. And then once they kill the spider, they get to leave. Oh, and in the encounter, he has like cool spider helmet. So what I'll do is, yeah, I think I'll probably just leave it a cool spider helmet. Anyway, that's it. Just surviving. I'm going to make them run through a bleak storm with these ghosts of Lightfall, like trying to kill them or fighting and hurting them. This dungeon crawl, this first part, is going to just be like a role-play encounter, long rest, really get the, the story moving. Then I'm going to do this puzzle or skill challenge, which they probably shouldn't get hurt for this, but it'll just be like trying to get through. And then this spider encounter. And then the last one, this is going to be a role-play challenge to get information. So I think that is going to be the end. I think my daughter is calling my name from up the stairs. Maybe you can hear her. She's going, Daddy, Daddy. But hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to end it here. Check out the games. Check out the sessions 1, 2, and this is the prep for session 3. And in addition to that, check out absolutetabletop.com if you want to see more about Dragon Grin. James and I have several books up there. I'll link them in probably one of the cards or something. Maybe I'll do like a little speech bubble somewhere up here where you can check them out or check the other sessions out or whatever. But anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. I hope, you get some use out of it. Let me know what you do differently. And until next time, may your dice roll high.